In this lesson, we will learn how to manage stacked and layered wash effects. We will be covering the following: group, lock, and hide functions, 2D resource pane, magic mirror, reusing washes on other patterns, and applying washes to the rest of the garment. We will continue with the jumpsuit, which we have started assigning washes to in the previous lesson. We start by adding in all the washes for the front leg. You should already have downloaded the folder of washes from the previous lesson. We add the Whiskers Type 1 wash and the Whiskers Type 2 wash. Before we start assigning, we can first organize the artworks in the Artwork section on the Resources tabs. We highly recommend placing all the washes for one pattern next to one another to make it easy to identify them. Simply drag and drop them where we want them to be placed. We can also use the large thumbnail images for an easy view of the artworks available. If needed, we can also expand the Resources tabs by dragging it. The next thing is to rename the artworks. For example, these washes are for the front left leg, so we can rename them. We type FL leg, which stands for front left leg. If your company has their own naming convention, be sure to follow as required. Now we can assign the artworks to the front left leg pattern. Now we adjust the material blending and transparency to achieve the look we want. We can pause the lesson here to complete assigning all the artworks to the front leg pattern. We want to group these washes together. This is to avoid the artworks from being moved around easily. It also makes it easier to manage these stacked washes. Using the Select tool, we marquee select the artworks assigned like this. Note that we should not be selecting the pattern itself. Then in the context view, we click Group. The next step is to rename the group for us to identify the group of washes easily. We type FL leg washes and click Enter to save the changes. Once the artworks are grouped, clicking any of the artworks, the group will be selected. If we need to move or adjust just one of the artworks, we will need to double-click within the group to select an element. We are also able to view the group within the 2D resource pane. We right-click the group and select Piece Resources. This loads the 2D resource pane, and the pattern which the group of washes resides in is highlighted in yellow. When we expand the dropdown, we will see the group, which we can expand further to view its contents. Here we can lock or hide the group. Locking will ensure we cannot make any changes to the position of the material in the 2D or 3D window. A locked element will show as grayed out edges. Hiding means it will not be visible in the 2D or 3D window. This can be useful if we need to adjust the pattern and clear the 2D window for a better view. Additionally, we can lock and hide the individual elements within the group as well. These options are also available by right-clicking the element in the 2D or 3D window. After we have grouped the washes for one side, we want to clone it to the other side of the leg pattern using Magic Mirror feature. We click on the group of washes. Then in the context view, we click on the magic mirror dropdown. The option we want to select would be Shape plus Material. This clones the artworks, flips them, and assigns them to the pattern's symmetrical counterpart. We can see the cloned washes in the 2D and 3D windows and the artwork resource pane. Note that this only works for patterns that are symmetrical. For non-symmetrical patterns, we will need to manually clone and assign each artwork to the other side. Similarly, we will rename the group and the washes in the resource pane. Note that this creates completely independent artwork for the other side, so if any adjustments are made to one, make sure that we also make the same adjustments to the wash on the other side. Having independent artworks assigned on the other side also gives us flexibility to edit only one side if we have irregular wash effects on each side. Lastly, we can lock the wash placements to ensure that they don't get adjusted accidentally when we are working on the other parts of the garment. We pause the lesson here to ensure that we've completed cloning the wash effects to the other side of the leg patterns. Before we continue to the next part, challenge yourself to assign the back leg washes using the same method you've learned. Pause the lesson here to try. Here's what the assigned back leg washes should look like. The washes are grouped and locked, and we have renamed the washes in the Artwork Resource section. Let's continue adding washes to the garment. We add in the dark wash for the pocket. And we move it to be next to the pocket light wash in the Artwork section on the resource pane. Assign it to the pocket, then adjust the artwork's material blending and transparency as usual. Can you try to use the method we've learned previously to clone the washes on the pocket and front bodice patterns to the symmetrical patterns? You can pause the lesson here to give it a try first. We group the pocket washes first and rename the group. Then we rename the washes in the Artwork Resources section. We can multi-select the washes in the 2D window and apply Magic Mirror to the symmetrical patterns. We ensure we rename the cloned patterns in the resource pane. Lastly, we lock the washes in place. We want to add the same wash that was used on the front bodice for the back bodice. What should we do? A. Use the same wash and assign it to the back bodice patterns. Or B. Clone the existing washes, rename the washes, and assign it to the back bodice patterns. The correct answer is B. Clone the wash and assign it to the back bodice patterns. We want the back mid-bodice wash to be slightly brighter, so we reduce the transparency. Now we repeat the magic mirror workflow. We repeat the magic mirror workflow for the front bodice patterns too. Pause the lesson here if you need more time to complete the front and back bodice washes. We add the light and dark sash wash in the artwork resource section. This wash was created for the main sash pattern, but we want to reuse it for the waistband and the remaining sash patterns. Firstly, we assign the light wash to the main sash pattern and adjust the artwork as usual. In the 3D window, we can only see the wash on one side of the sash patterns. To fix this, we ensure that visible on outside and inside are enabled in the context view. We repeat this for the dark wash. Group and lock the washes on the sash. Now we want to clone the artworks to assign to the two other patterns. Before we assign, we want to adjust the artwork sizes to match the pattern. This is optional, but we want to keep our 2D window as neat as possible to avoid confusion. The pattern has a dimension of 3 by 30 centimeters. We go to the image editor for the cloned wash and ensure we edit the values under crop and not under image. This ensures the artwork is cropped and not made smaller, but if we need to scale the artwork for the other patterns, we can also adjust its dimensions in the image section. We can then select within the image editor which region of the wash we want to use. Remember to enable visible on outside and inside for each artwork we assign on the sash patterns. It is also okay if we want to use the same wash for the other side. Otherwise, we can clone the artwork again and repeat the same steps. For this sash pattern, let's use the same artwork. We can rotate the artwork the other way to make the wash look more irregular. We want to use the same wash for the waistband patterns. We can repeat the same method that we have used for the sash for the waistband patterns. Pause the lesson here and challenge yourself to add the wash to the waistband patterns. The washes have been added to the waistband patterns by cloning the artworks. We have also used the same artwork for the front waistband patterns. Next, we want to add washes to the belt loops. We do not have a specific wash created for the belt loops. We can reuse the leg whisker wash for this. There are a total of 5 belt loops. We can use the same wash for some of the belt loop patterns. We will create 2 separate wash effects. We clone the whisker wash for the leg. Then we rename the wash to belt loop 1. We click on the belt loop pattern to check the dimensions. The belt loop is 0.7 by 6 centimeters. We adjust the crop value to the dimension of the belt loop. We assign it to a belt loop, then using the image editor, we select the area of the wash we want. It looks like the wash effect is too large, hence we're not able to see much of the whisker effect on the belt loop pattern. Let's reduce the size of the image first, then we need to adjust the crop size and region again. This looks great. Now we can clone this artwork to create belt loop 2. Now we assign it to the other belt loop. And we select the crop region we want in the image editor. We select which wash we want to assign to the other belt loops. Remember that we can rotate the artwork the other way to create a more irregular wash look. We lock the washes in the 2D window. Pause the lesson here to finish adding the washes to the belt loops. Before we end the lesson, we have the collar and collar band washes to add. You can add those in as practice. Remember that if the washes for the collar and collar band are only showing on one side of the pattern, we must enable visible on outside and inside in the context view. We are done with adding washes to the jumpsuit. In this video, you've learned how to manage stacked and layered washed effects.